The House will remember that there was some talk at one stage of a Commonwealth citizenship. Now it was difficult to understand what the status of Commonwealth citizenship might be, except that it meant that its members were not completely foreign to one another. That unfairness remains, but I think it is as well that we left off talking about something vague which could not be surely defined. The other fact also remains, as I have just stated, the fact that we should take the right to ourselves if we so choose to exercise it at any time, to enter into treaties or arrangements with Commonwealth countries, assuring us of certain mutual privileges and preferences. I have briefly placed before the House this document. It is a simple document, and yet the House is fully aware that it is a highly important document, or rather, what it contains is of great and historic significance. I went to this conference some weeks ago as the representative of India. I had, of course, consulted my colleagues here previously because it was a great responsibility, and no man is big enough to shoulder that responsibility by himself when the future of India is at stake. For many months past, we had often consulted one another, consulted great and representative organizations, consulted many members of this House. Nevertheless, when I went, I carried this great responsibility, and I felt the burden of it. I had able colleagues to advise me, but I was the sole representative of India, and in a sense the future of India for the moment was in my keeping. I was alone in that sense, and yet not quite alone, because as I travelled through the air and as I was there at the conference table, the ghosts of many yesterday of my life surrounded me and brought up picture after picture before me, saints and guardians keeping watch over me, telling me perhaps not to trip and not to forget them. I remembered, as many members might remember, that day 19 years ago when we took a pledge for the first time on the bank of the river Ravi at the midnight, or on 26 January, and how we take affiliated pledge year after year in spite of difficulty. And finally I remembered that day when, standing at this very place, I placed a resolution before this House. Let us not be led away by considering the situation in terms of events which are no longer here. You will see that the resolution of the Congress, but I have read out, says that because India becomes a republic, the association of India with the Commonwealth must of course change. Further, it says that free association may continue subject only to our complete freedom being assured. Now that is exactly what has been attempted in this Declaration of London. I ask you or any honorable member to put out in what way the freedom, the independence of India has been limited in the slightest. I do not think it has been. In fact, the greatest stress has been laid not only on the independence of India but the independence of each individual nation in the Commonwealth. I am often asked how we can join a Commonwealth in which there is racial discrimination, in which there are other things happening to which we object. That I think is a fair question, and it is a matter which must necessarily give us some trouble in our thinking. Nevertheless, it is a question which does not really arise. That is to say, when we have entered into an alliance with a nation or group of nations, it does not mean that we accept their policies, and it does not mean that we commit ourselves in any way to something that they may do. In fact, this House knows that we are carrying on at the present moment as struggle. Our countrymen are carrying on a struggle in regard to racial discrimination in various parts of the world. The House knows that in the few years, one of the major questions before the United Nations at the instance of India has been the question of Indians in South Africa. May I, if the House will permit me for a moment, refer to an event which took place yesterday, that is, the passing of the resolution at the General Assembly of the United Nations, and express my appreciation and my government appreciation of the way our delegation has functioned in this matter, and our appreciation of all those nations of the United Nations, almost all, in fact all barring South Africa, which finally supported the attitude of India. One of the pillars of our foreign policy, repeatedly stated as to fight against racial discrimination, to fight for the freedom of suppressed nationalities. Are we compromising on that issue by remaining in the Commonwealth? We have been fighting on the various issues, even though we have thus far been a dominion of the Commonwealth.